cool. So we're live on episode number 20 of the Stagger tapes this week with the two-time Powri National champion and the current 2NZ, Zach Daum. So thanks for sitting down.
No, thanks for having me.
I just thought I'd start off because seeing that we're in your new shop here in Henderson, it is, yeah. So it's a pretty nice shop full of all the outlaw carts and obviously the midget down the back there as well.
Yeah, it's luckily we moved into here before the outlaw carts arrived. If not, I don't know if they'd have fit in the old shop. So, we got 10 or 12 of them here now, and there's I think 2 or 3 open carts that have already been picked up and bought. So, we're just trying to get that deal going. Get it off the ground and get another class over here that I think was really helpful for future speedway over here. I think it's quite obvious when you look at Kyle, Logan. Those guys adapt so well to midgets and sprint car racing, and they all start in that. I think that's a huge curve because they're so overpowered. They're very light cars, a lot of horsepower, so they adapt to a sprint car midget very quickly. So, hopefully we can get this off the ground and rolling, and got a couple races planned here for everybody, and that have got these, and got some more motors and stuff coming down. So it'll be fun. Hopefully next year we can have maybe have a race or two during the international series and make it fun.
Have outlaw carts been something that you've been into for a while? Because from me personally, I've obviously only really been following you closely since you started coming down here, and I saw you kind of getting them kicked off over in the States and getting involved with them over there as well. So
yeah, that's actually, I wasn't allowed to race go-karts. I raced quarter midgets back home, and we didn't have outlaw carts when I was growing up in the Midwest. They were very big in California, Texas, a little bit in Wisconsin, and they were just starting to kind of get their feet wet in North Carolina. In the Midwest, we really had nothing. So it wasn't even an option for me growing up. And so I raced quarter midgets and never even thought about outlaw carts. And then once I got into, I was well into midget stuff, and when the outlaw carts started to come around, and once they started to come around, I was like, wow, these things are pretty cool. And so I kind of got one, mucked around with it for a little while, never had time to race it properly, just kind of mucked around with it. And then I thought that if I could promote a series, we could get it going on Tuesdays, and it worked out. It went well the first year, and then the next year we got rained out so much that everybody just kind of got bored of it, really. And so we ended up just shit canning the whole deal, and ended up, and they kind of died off because of motor issues, and basically the rules got out of hand. Nobody was there to police them, so that's what I'm going to try to learn from our mistakes that we've had in the States and bring them down here and keep it cost affordable. And I'd like to stay involved with it just because I know what's already hurt it. Try to learn from your mistakes and move on.
So that's your plan then, I suppose, is to keep quite a tight limit on them, I suppose.
Yeah, I want to keep the motors in check. The cars are cheap. Anybody can afford a car. Anybody can afford a midget if they really want to. It's just the motors that are always out of hand. So I feel like if we can keep the motor rules down to a minimum, keep them as stock as possible, and you still want to be able to tinker around with them a little bit, because that's part of just the fun of having a race car. You like to tinker with it. So I think that's basically just keep them as limited as possible. Don't spend any excess money that you don't have to, and I think they're already overpowered enough, so you're going to have plenty of power. And just keep the rules in check, keep tires in check, make sure they're on hard tires so you don't wear them out so quickly, and just make it a cost-effective way to go racing and have a lot of fun.
So the two motor options are?
For the open class, there's the 450, which is a 4-stroke, and the CR, basically a 2-stroke 500. I think Kawasaki, the old KX 500 and the CR 500. You can, the 450s is wide open. KTM makes them, Suzuki, Yamaha, Honda, Kawasaki. They all build a 450. The CR 500s or the 500s are a little bit more Honda based. There's not a lot of Kawasaki 500s around, so that's really the open class, and the intermediate class will be the 125 senior Rotax motor, and then the box stock is an LO or an LS206 Briggs & Stratton spec motor. which is box stocks for the kids. So they don't need a lot of horsepower. They'll run into enough stuff with 8 horsepower. They don't need 10 or 12 or 50. So the intermediate class won't be a spec deal because the Rotax is pretty well self-policing itself. As long as you got a senior Rotax, it's pretty easy to check for that. So just keep the opens in check make sure they don't get too big. They don't have guys boring them out to 550s like they do back home. And I think you'll be able to buy a motor. You can, my plan is to keep it within the 450s. You can go to a 508. Because you can buy a big bore kit for a used motor and basically do it yourself, and it's still pretty cheap. You got $1,000, you got a 508. That thing will last you a couple years, and you won't even have to touch it. You'll change the oil and then clean the air filter just because you feel sorry for it. It'd be pretty easy to keep it that way.
I suppose that's kind of the way you'd want to go as well, especially in a class like this. You spoke there for a second about kids and stuff. What kind of age limit are you planning on putting on them?
The box stocks will be basically from age 5. Get into it at 5, and some kids will be ready for an intermediate by maybe 9 or 10. Some might not be ready for an intermediate ever, but basically you'll be 5 to 10-ish will be the box stock range, and then once you get out of the box stock range, you get into the intermediate. But the intermediate will also be for older people too, people that don't have the ability or don't want to run a CR500 or a 450. They can step down to the intermediate class and it'll be a little bit more tamer for everybody, and then that'll be a good stepping stone for the box stock kids. They can race with a wide variety of age limits and age skill levels, I guess, and that'll be a very good class for that. There won't be really an age limit there, and then you'll have to be probably 14 to get into an open cart.
Okay, and when you start looking at tracks and stuff, there aren't really a whole lot of suitable tracks here in New Zealand either. So
yeah, that's kind of our issue right now. We ran them at Rosebank, we've ran them at Harrisville, we ran them at Wakaraka Park the other day, and I think that's a really, really good sized for them. I'm actually going to go try to talk to the promoter there and see if we can't run there. Even if we can run there once or twice a month, and just see if he'll let us put down a surface there, because that rocks, it's real rocky, pea gravel-ish, right? It's not proper dirt. So I think if we get some proper clay there, that will be a really good place. Still trying to build a proper track for him also. It's in the works. It's just getting it done is going to be the key here, and we can probably run it. Hopefully we got to have a race at Rosebank by the end of the year, and that's a little bit big, but it's a good place to get started anyways.
Would you want a wall, ideally?
Ideally, yes. A wall, if you don't have a wall, you need a little bit more banking. I think if you can leave the track a little flatter if you have a wall, because then you can throw some dirt up there and at least get you a second groove. That I just watched a video, I guess on the weekend, that where they're racing at in Perth. I don't even know what the place is called. I was tagged in a video and I seen it, and it looks like a solo track or whatever, but it's got a wall, and I mean it was cool, and it was real small, and smaller the better. I think anyways. I think the smaller the racetrack, the better the racing anyway. So hopefully we can get something built that's small with a wall, and I think would be really entertaining.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's pretty much all I wanted about those. That's ideal. Yeah. So we'll move forward into your season so far down here. So lots of seconds.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me.
But it's been a good year though. You've been like real consistent up top pretty much the whole year, and you had a real good international series there as well.
Yeah, I mean we were good. We haven't been great. We've been there. It's kind of frustrating to run second so many times, but it's also rewarding to run second also. It's I know I get a lot of shit from Brian and Gareth for being a bridesmaid here, but we did win one race early this year, so that was at least have one won. But the trophy cabinet's full of seconds, so I'd like to get another win and put that in there, and that way I can at least start the year with a good note and end the year with a good note.
It's not so bad seeing that you actually came down here fresh off your off a concussion break, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. It all started middle of July, August probably. I can't remember when it was, but leading the race, 5 laps to go. You think everything's good, and the motor locked up going down the straightaway, and it sent me in the fence and started flipping, and I think that rattled some. Because I was feeling good before that, but I think that rattled up some old injuries that I'd had that I thought I'd taken care of, and I never did do it properly. Once I went and seen the doctor, like a concussion specialist, and once I went there, that was the best thing I ever did. Really, I think he saved my life. Because it's funny, just in a couple weeks after going and seeing him, everybody said my attitude changed. I was a lot better headspace and everything about it. So I credit him for keeping me in racing, because I think I wouldn't have lasted very long racing the way I was. I just get dizzy, and you just forgetfulness and just a lot of things and you're just not right in a race car. And the best thing was when I come down here and I flipped over the second or third night I was over here, and I got out and I felt fine. And it wasn't an easy flip, but it wasn't a big dinger either. So, but I got out and I wasn't dizzy. I had no concussion symptoms, and that just made me feel, that kind of put the icing on the cake that I was fixed.
As such, yeah. What kind of stuff did he have you doing to actually overcome it?
Basically just exercises. They find out, they go in and you do your impact test, and you do all their testing, and then they find out what parts of the brain that you've injured. It's broken into about 6 or 7 different parts, and they figure out that you did this cell, that cell, and this one. Well, they know that this certain exercise is hooked up to that part of the brain, and so they just make you do those exercises, and it gets the brain pumping. And instead of resting to help your head heal, they want to attack it and make it refire, just like a cylinder down. You need to put a spark plug in it and get it firing again. So that's what, I had lunges, push-ups, running, walking. I had to go to frickin' Walmart for an hour a day and deal with people because I didn't want to be around people. It was very interesting because it was 180 degrees opposite of what concussions were to me. I thought, when you get a concussion, you go sit in a dark room, be quiet, don't overwork yourself. And he was the opposite. He said, go to work and just work till you're dog tired every day, and just if something makes you dizzy, keep doing it, and just work past it until it's fixed. And it was just it was complete opposite of what I thought it was.
That is interesting, because pretty much what you always get told is you have to rest. It's like trying to sleep and just let yourself recover.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'd always thought it was. And this guy saved more lives than he probably sees 1,000 people a year with concussions, and a lot of very well known. The 2 places I had to go were Pittsburgh, and that's where the Pittsburgh Steelers training facility was, and then, which is our NFL football team for you guys over here that don't know, and then the Pittsburgh Penguins, which is a NHL hockey team, and had to go to both of those places. And in the meantime of talking to this guy, his name's Mickey Collins, and he was the All Blacks head doctor or head specialist for 10 years over here.
Wow.
So he knew New Zealand, and we really hit it off, and we had a lot more connections than what we thought, or what I would have thought I would have had with a doctor. So, we hit it off really well, and I just tried to do what he told me to do, because I wanted to get back. I want to race for a long time. I want to be healthy. I want to be normal. I want to live a normal life. I don't want to be 40 years old. That's not very far away though. I don't want to be 40 and have concussion symptoms, and I don't want to put myself in that position.
So what kind of stuff did he did they put down the head injuries too? Was it just not allowing enough time to recover after crashes, or was it just the how big the crashes were?
I think it all stemmed back from about 2014 when I crashed a Graham car in Australia and knocked myself out. And it's the only time I've ever been knocked out in a race car, but it was a massive one. I bent even the steering wheel. So, it all stemmed back from that. And after that crash, I took 90 days off. I didn't race because that's what I thought you had to do. That's what I thought concussions were. And, when talking to him, basically he said that any time I've had an injury, even though I thought I was doing the right thing, I wasn't, and it just masked over. So this last one it just woke all these other symptoms back up because they never were treated properly. So now that they've been treated properly, if he says I do take a dinger, let's say, he says I can go back in, I can see him, he can make sure I'm still, that part is fixed, and we can fix it again, just like a broken arm. You put a cast on it, you let it heal, and you go again.
Yeah.
And so it was just it was reassuring to know that what I was doing was wrong, but it's not. We didn't know it was wrong, and that's what it's just getting the right help and seeing the right person to do it, and that's really was the key.
I know something else that's helped a lot to reduce the concussion symptoms and stuff down here is the seat technology that's come along as well. That's come a long way in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've argued with people about for years is I got to go back to Tracy Hines and Shane Alec. Those are your old school guys. They've never ran a full containment seat.
Yeah.
They've never, neither one of them's ever been knocked out in a race car. And I've argued with both of them that they have. And, neither one's never been knocked out. Now they've broken ribs, they've broken collarbones, they've broken other things, but they never got knocked out. And I think our seat technology has gotten a lot better. Don't get me wrong. We don't break our backs as much. We don't have broken ribs as much. But I think we've just kind of moved the injury to the head.
Yeah.
Because our head doesn't move. Like with the old style, just a headrest and head nets, your head would move a lot, but your brain wasn't smashing against your skull when it stopped. Now, I've argued with LaJoy with this for 4 or 5 years, and he's finally kind of getting my point of it now, and he's moved to the kind of like the Butler-Belt deal is, they were, I think, a couple years ahead on technology for that, where they have so much head support on the right side and the left, but they have the right side head foam is so thick that your head is able to go into it a little bit before it stops, and I think that's a big key in helping prevent concussions, because their head moving around is not a big deal. It's when it stops that's what causes the injuries.
I know there's the Butler-Built Easy Seat. They made 2 styles of it. So they made one style with that softer padding, like we're talking about now, and then they made another style with a hard foam, and it's those hard foam ones were instant knockout. As soon as regardless of how big or small the crash was, everyone was just getting KO'd straight away.
Yeah, that was. I remember seeing those in sprint cars probably 6, 7, 8 years ago, and those guys that had those seats, and that's kind of why. At that point in time, I'd always been a LaJoy guy, but I was arguing with LaJoy, and I was thinking about switching seats because of that. And I kept seeing these guys get knocked out, and I'm like, man, I don't want to switch to that. But since that was that hard foam, and since then they've went to the softer foam, which is a lot like what they run in the IndyCar stuff now.
Yeah.
And and now LaJoy has moved to the same stuff. I've got the same type. Head restraint or head supports being put on my helmets or my seats back home now, and it's the same deal. It's big, thick foam, soft foam, and it gradually gets harder as you go. But we're finally getting to the point where I think it's going to cut down on concussions, and we've already cut down on a lot of the other injuries. So we're at least making it safer. Don't know if it's maybe we're too safe. I don't really know, but. I'd much rather have a broken arm or a rib or something than a concussion. So, I think we're going in the right direction anyways with seats.
That's good. Yeah, we're even seeing roll cage stuff changing now as well. We're seeing in the new bullets, they've got all the new supports and stuff like that. I think between my crash and Spencer's crash, where the bullet kind of folded in half in a way, they kind of strengthened it up a bit there, and you're starting to see the halos come back and a whole bunch of stuff like that as well.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. The only bad part is I think we can make them too stiff.
Yeah.
There's a fine line. Like the sprint car stuff back home, we had to put all the what's the guy's name? Can't even think of it. But, we had to do all the safety bars now. And I'm not a fan of it without proper testing being done. But it's so hard to do proper testing in our sport because there's no crash that's similar.
Yeah.
You can't just, we can go drive a car into a wall, but how many times do you see a car go front impact into a wall? It doesn't happen that often. So every crash is different. We just have to, you got to learn from each crash. You see them, you see how the car folds up, you watch video, you see the videos that we have nowadays are so great that we can stop and go every millisecond so you can see when the car bends and you can see if there's something you can do. So I think safety's getting there. It's getting a lot better. There's going to be a fine line of making them too stiff where the driver takes the impact. I'd much rather junk a car than junk a driver. A frame's easy to replace. They're cheap. Your life is expensive in a way. So it's there's no right or wrong answer. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say one way's right, one way's wrong. It's just there's going to be a time when we're going to make them too stiff.
Yeah.
But hopefully we haven't done that yet, and I don't think we're to that point yet. But we're on the right path of making them safer. But we just got to remember that we can't make them too stiff, I think.
So talking chassis, you run a Bullet Toyota down here, and you ran a Bullet Toyota up in the States for a little bit, but you went away from it again?
Yeah. I ended up I crashed one of the cars and figured out that the car that I ordered the car that I got wasn't what I ordered, and so we just kind of went away, and I built my Chili Bowl car 7 or 8 years ago now, and I kind of took that design and I've taken it into Flea's Ripper car. Basically I did what I didn't think he was doing was right, but I just did what I was comfortable with and what my old Eagles were, which I really were comfortable in and won some races in. So just gonna go back to that and see what happens. I don't think any chassis is better or worse or other than the Kings right now. Can't seem to be able to beat them, but that being said, they just have a good package, and it's just you got to work around. You got to find out what works for you, what works for your team, what's your package, and once you find that little niche, you just stay in it. I don't think Justin tries different stuff every night. He stays in his box. He knows what's good, and that's what you just got to do here. And I just never could find that box back home. So, and once I crashed that car, I figured out why the feeling I had of this car down here and the car I had back home was different when I built both of them. And I knew what parts were on both of them. They were basically identical cars, and the feeling was so different. But once I figured that out, then it made sense as to why I felt like we were struggling. But with that being said, I just went and did something else, and we're going to hopefully I don't regret it.
Something else that's different that you do as well is down here we don't really see a whole lot of Penske shocks.
Yep.
As well. I mean, down here it's really just your CSIs or your ARS, or I don't know if anyone still runs AFCO down here or whatever. But yeah, so what's actually drawn you to the Penske shock?
Just one guy. Dave Reedy is at Penske, and if that guy went to Coney or Chevy and told Chevy to build shocks, I would go with him. That guy's he's an incredible person for one, and he's just always worked well with me. Even when we first started midget racing 10 years ago, we had ARS stuff, and because we didn't know any better, that's what we had on our micros, so we just put them on our midget, and The first race I put Penske's on was Chili Bowl prelim night, and I won. So kind of just been hooked on him ever since that. But that guy he's just a good dude in general, and I work well with him. And the other night I got home from the races, and it was like 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was, I don't know, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning where he was, and I texted him, and we had about an hour-long conversation. He doesn't sleep, and I don't sleep, so we were just kind of bullshitting back and forth, and just that kind of customer service. And he used to race, so he knows he knows the feeling that I'm talking about anyway. So, and he's not just a shot guy; he's a chassis guy. He can work on a motor. He can do anything. And so sometimes you're looking for, you think it's a shock and it's not, and or it's a bar. There's a multiple little. It's a multitude of things it could be, and he's just really good about being able to diagnose it. That's but like I said, if he went to a different company, I'd join him. It's just the respect I have for that guy.
Yeah, that's something that I've learned in the past 3 years since I've been in midgets is like they're just so complex that they're
really simple too.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, and you can chase the wrong thing for a long time, and we've done that for most of this year. We've struggled, and we've just chased the wrong thing for most of the year, and then once we found what it was like, there it is.
Yeah. Then your results are better.
Exactly.
You got fast again, and it just I think that comes with experience also. You gotta be able to feel. You have to be able to feel, and you got to break down each part of the corner to figure out where you are either lacking or you feel like there's an issue. So it's like you said, midgets are really complex, but they're also really simple. But you can chase the wrong thing for a long time.
Yeah, and I know that's something that guys like yourself and Michael and Brad, even Hayden, you guys all have that feeling, and you've had the wrong feeling and the right feeling so many times.
Yeah, that comes with experience. That's this is your third year in a midget, so roughly you've got 40 or 50 races. Well, hell, we'll do that in a year.
Yeah.
So we feel so many different tracks, we'll try a different setup this night, and we'll realize that it's better on entry here, but it hurts you on exit. And you take all those feelings and you learn, and it's all seat of your pants deal. And then you just take that and you just keep building and building. Well, then when you do have an issue or you're not feeling something, you know where to go to, and that's just experience. Guys have been racing for a lot longer.
Yeah. You spoke about your when you threw those shocks on for the first time at the Chili Bowl and you won your prelim. Your prelim night history is very good. I don't know if you've noticed, but in the last probably 7 years, you're almost a guarantee to make it lock it into that top three.
Up until this year, I thought we were really good on our prelim nights. We've even been able to dig ourselves out of holes. It seems like I always end up chasing Kyle. Which I'm not mad about chasing Kyle, but ran second to Kyle a few different times there, and it's kind of funny though. I think the last 2 or 3 years up until this year, we both start on the front row of our prelim night, and I'll lead the first 7 or 8 laps until the top comes in, and then he drives around me, and then I move up and I chase him, and I was like, all right, this year, which I wasn't on the same night as him this year, but I'm like, if I start on the front row, I'm after 5 laps, I'm just moving, just don't even worry about it, just move, because it's coming. But it was frustrating this year. I thought we had a really good car in our heat race and got caught up with the dude spinning out, and the steering box broke out of the race car in the feature. Drove around with my knee shoved up against the left side bracket, actually broke off the frame, so the dash and my knee were holding it in the car, so it's real hard to steer. And I thought we were better than what we were on prelim night, but yeah, prelim night's one of those deals where you put so much pressure on yourself to do good, because you do not want to be buried in a B main. You don't want to even be in a B main, because so much shit can happen in a B main there that you can be running 5th, and next thing you know, you're crashed out and you're watching the A main, and you were solidly locked into the show, and now you're watching. So if any race is going to be the biggest race of the year that you run, it'll be prelim night, just so you put yourself in a good position come Saturday.
Yeah. So how did you get your car so good in those, like at the Chili Bowl in particular? Was that just through all the years of going and then you've just fine-tuned, or you just hit something early and kind of got it good?
I don't know. I felt like when I built my Chili Bowl car, I felt like it just right off the bat it was good. We're pretty basic, don't do nothing stupid. It's just a basic deal. We don't get too far away from it either. I know the year I ran third there, I took really good notes of what I did all throughout the whole week, and I kind of go back to that to a point. Every year's a little bit different, but for the most part, it's all the same. That we generally know. Throwing Monday into the equation now has kind of threw everybody for a little bit of a curveball, but we always knew Tuesday the track's probably the slickest. Wednesday gets a little better. Thursday is the heaviest track, and then Friday they soak it, and it's just typically Friday's like the worst race of the week for prelim nights, but they got to get the moisture in it for Saturday. So like we've all kind of been going there for so many years. We kind of have a good basis of what the track's going to do, so we know what to do with our cars. And I think you just kind of get lucky and you hit on something, and once you get there, you just stick with it. And, like I said earlier, just stay in your little box. Don't, unless you're just out to lunch, don't worry about trying to reinvent the wheel. Just race. If you think you need to do a little fine-tunement here or there, that's one thing. But, just don't get outside your comfort zone.
Is that one of those places where you really just have to kind of focus on yourself? Because, I mean, there's so much going on every night of the week there. So it must be easy for guys to get caught up with the kind of the bullshit that does happen in heat races and all the rest.
Yeah, it is. That's because I think if there's one place that you're going to put more pressure on yourself, will be there. I know I do. I'm sure Kyle. I'm sure everybody does. I think Kyle probably put less pressure on himself now since he's won. But I remember talking to Christopher 2 or 3 years ago, and we're sitting on the ramp right before driver intros, and he was a nervous wreck. Just absolutely nervous. Couldn't sit still, walking around, just wouldn't talk to nobody, arms shaking. And I'm just like, what are you nervous for? Which I feel like once you've made the Chili Bowl, you've made the A main, you can just kind of calm down. Like you've proved that you're fast, you're there. You can just kind of ride, until the car starts up, for A main hot laps. You can kind of just calm down. Just you're good. You're in a good position. Just do your deal. And I think I think the pressure of it's kind of off after you've made it, but when you're in a B main, it's a total opposite.
Yeah, well, we'll stick to talking about your career over in the States. So, as I mentioned earlier, is it 2 Powri championships or
3?
3, right? Yeah. So you've always been a big supporter of that Powri championship. So, is that just because it's more local, or?
It just makes sense.
Yeah.
For with where I'm located, I still enjoy running the USAC stuff. Don't get me wrong, but going to Florida at the beginning of the year, that trip costs $6,000 to $8,000 to go down there and do, and then you got to go to Pennsylvania, you still got to go out to Pennsylvania once. That's another $10,000 trip. And then you got another trip out to California, and that's a minimum of $10,000-$12,000 trip, and it just doesn't make sense for me and my team to do that. The Powri stuff's all. If I wanted to, I could sleep in my bed every night. It'd be a pain in the ass, but I could. And it's for the most part, the races are 2 to 4. I think our longest drive this year will be 6 or 8 hours, which isn't bad. We can go home that night, and my dad's can go to work Monday morning. It's not where you go out to California, you got to buy hotels or stay in the rig for a month, and it just doesn't make sense for what we're doing to do that. Where the Powri's a lot of the same racetracks that I grew up racing on, micros and late models. My dad raced at some of them, so it's just it's cool to, and they're all bull rings for the most part, and I just love a good bull ring.
Yeah, USAC do tend to get on those bigger, wide open tracks more often, don't they?
Yeah, and and don't get me wrong, I loved going to Belleville, Kansas. That was probably one of my favorite races once I figured out that where the top of the racetrack was. It was way up there. It took me 3 years to figure out where it was, but and it's just I think there's a place for those type of racetracks, and there's a place for those races, but for the most part, midgets right now are migrating back to smaller tracks, and I think that's why the Powri deal is so strong right now.
It is. I mean, the car count's been really good the last couple of years, hasn't it?
Yeah, and like we'll go to the Oklahoma races here, and I bet you there's 60, for the first 4 nights, and I mean that's hard, because they do passing point format. So, if you start in the front row of your heat race, you could win your heat race and still start 15th in the feature. That's tough. Like you did everything right, you won the race, and you can be screwed. Where which I'm a fan of passing points. I don't like qualifying. I don't like that format. So it's just it's kind of luck of the draw, but it seems to be better that way. And even once we start to taper off on car count, we're still have 30. I think we only went like 2 places last year where we didn't have a B main. We still had a full field. We just didn't have a B. And I think that's testitude to the size of the tracks we run at and location of them. He races where it makes sense to race. And, we can all spend all the money we want, but at some point in time we're going to run out of money to spend. So if you can kind of keep everything in check and race within your means, it's, you can continue to race.
I was going to ask you about format because you mentioned that you don't like the qualifying format. You can get hard done by a little bit with the passing points thing, but is that just one of those things where you get unlucky and you get lucky, you just kind of deal with it?
In the grand scheme of a year, if you draw 30 times, you're going to draw 15 good ones and you're going to draw 15 bad ones. That's just part of it. Now, there's some people that are lucky, just naturally lucky people, and they might draw the front row 20 times instead of 15, but it's just part of it. I feel like it works itself out in the long run, and you can be screwed by qualifying on a pill draw format. You still pill draw for your qualifying, so you still can be dictated by what the racetrack's doing. So I would just much rather race, and that's part of me. I like to chase somebody. I like to see somebody ahead of me that I need to chase, where qualifying there's nobody ahead of you. Like you just kind of, I struggle with that a little bit. So, personally, I just feel like passing points is better, and I'm a little biased on that, but I just feel like in the long run, I also think it produces better racing because of USAC format. If you qualify good, all you got to do is run top 4 or 5 in your heat, and you're locked in to the redraw. There's no reason to win your heat race. And at least with Powri and a passing points format, you have to race hard every lap, and I think that generates better racing.
Yeah, no, for sure. Is the biggest win of your career your Hut 100 win?
I would say so. That was kind of the one that was big. It was just big as a family for us because we that year we got our shop knocked down by a tornado, and we were working out of another shop, and everything was just at the time was just going wrong. Shit was just not right. It just seemed like, man, we keep swinging at curveballs and we keep missing, and it that just kind of made just the timing of everything made it really big. First USAC win I'd had, first real midget race. I'd won prelim night at Chili Bowl before that, and I still ranked that one up there, no doubt. But the first, I won a USAC race before I'd ever won a Powri race, which is kind of opposite. But that one was big, and it was just cool to do.
That was 9 years ago.
Yeah, no.
Have you won? How many USAC wins do you have?
3.
3. Okay, where were the other 2?
Belleville, Kansas, prelim night there, and Lawrenceburg, Indiana Midget Week.
Cool.
Yeah, that's both big tracks, and I don't really like big tracks.
Yeah,
so.
I was just going to ask that, yeah. What's it like on Lawrenceburg? I remember talking to Hayden, and Hayden loved it. He thought it was badass.
It is cool. I think for midgets, it can get strung out. Like, if you watch the highlight videos, the best racing of it's on restarts. It is, and I think all the midgets are so tough that we're all kind of grouped back together. So I think the racing's hard again, but I know there for a couple of years, like, we all just got strung out, and we was about 3 to 4 car lengths behind each other, and it's really hard to race. But now we're all back to even. We all basically have the same cars. So I really think we're back to, it is fun, and we're all back to being really competitive there instead of being just strung out. But I know when you go in to qualify there and you go into turn one and you don't lift, it's a little sketchy.
That's so cool. I mean, that's even when we went to Valvoline last year in Sydney, and it was like running there. Like that's a big speed jump for us from here, and then you go from there, and it's like it's a massive jump to most of the places over in the States.
Yeah, I mean, now don't get me wrong. Western Springs is fast. I mean, the gear you run in that place for the size that it is, it's a fast joint, but it's narrow, so you don't ever feel like you don't ever reach the full potential. If it was another 3 meters wide or whatever, you could really carry a lot more speed. But Parramatta is just a bad joint. Like that place there's so much grip, and it's sweeping, it's fast, and it can bite you in a hurry too. But it's up there for speed wise of even tracks that are bigger than it. It's way better. I think it's faster than what it is. It races a lot faster than what it looks like, I should say. But then, like you say, when you go to Belleville, Lawrenceburg, every racetrack on the East Coast back home is big. Port Royal, I feel like you could put Eldora inside of Port Royal. You get on those big racetracks and you kind of don't realize how fast you're going. Everything slows down until something happens, and then you realize how fast you're going. It's like, holy cow. And kind of catches your attention.
Yeah, you race a whole lot of different shit, really. It's I mean, there's nothing that you don't race in a way. I mean, you've got from the outlaw kart to the midget, and then wing, non-wing. You got a little bit of everything. Is there anything that you prefer? Is it? Because I mean, you do tend to race midgets a bit more than.
Well, yeah, that's just because I'm a midget guy. I'm stupid. I grew up going to midget races. Like that's what we did, and I fell in love with midgets when I was, 7, 8 years old in the grandstands watching races, and I always thought that they were probably the coolest cars that you could watch. Like a wing sprint car is really cool to watch, but when it's set up perfect, you don't even need to drive it. You just as long as you do the driving things right, they're not hard. And a non-wing sprint car is just mean, nasty. They just want to kill you every lap. But there's just certain things of each car that you take that you really like. But if I had to pick one, it'd be a midget all day. I've said for years that even if I got hurt or I couldn't race no more or whatever, I'd still race Chili Bowl. I'd still race that race just because it's a midget race, and it's huge. But I just love racing midgets, and that's what I want to do. It's all I ever wanted to do. I never wanted to go to NASCAR. I never wanted to do that sort of stuff. I just wanted to be a dirt racer and race midgets.
I know, especially down here. I mean, the racing between midgets and sprint cars down here are like polar opposites. I mean, the tracks are just so small down here and flat that you can't really optimize a wing at any point.
No, they'd be better off take the wings off these sprint cars here. Then one might end up in the grandstands. But I think the tracks here are almost too small for sprint cars, honestly. Bay Park's probably the best one, and that I've been to anyways. I haven't been to a ton of tracks down here, but I think Bay Park's probably the best for sprint car size-wise. Western Springs doesn't really do justice for wing sprint cars. Now, don't get me wrong, wing sprint cars are cool. I don't disagree, but watching a midget race at Western Springs is 10 times better than watching a sprint car race at Western Springs. And I'm a fan of both. That's just how I feel.
Yeah. We'll move in and we'll talk a little bit how this kind of all came about. So how did you get tied up with Wayne Green?
So Brock came down to run. He come down to the States and ran Midget Week, and we basically just swapped a ride. Greenie was, I think, just getting back into the sport. Luckily, his wife doesn't listen to this, or hopefully she doesn't listen to me racing stuff, which I doubt she does. So, I think, I don't know if she knew that he was getting back into it at the time, but he hadn't owned a car. I think after Jared ran for him, I think he kind of took a couple years off there, and he just basically he built me a car in exchange for Brock going down there, and it just kind of hit it off. And I ever since then, it's 5 years in racing is a long time. This is my 5th year I've been down here with him, and it's really cool. He spends a lot of money for me to play, more or less, and I know he loves it and he enjoys it, and I could never repay the experience and everything that I get to do down here. So it's hopefully it doesn't end anytime soon, but it's been a great time so far.
You do give back quite a lot, though. I mean, you spend a whole lot of time down here working on the cars. You spend a whole lot of time even helping Greeny with his business. I've heard, anyways.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's true or not.
Used to do more when they had all the equipment at the shop. I'd kind of muck around and help Andrew if he needed it or whatever. But I working on the cars is no big deal to me, because if I was at home, that's what I'd do.
Yeah.
So it's really no big deal. I like to make it as stress free on him. Perfect world, he would show up here at 5 o'clock after he gets off work and sit around, have a beer or two, and we chit chat, and he can go home and have dinner and not have to worry about the race cars. If he wants to play around, he wants to play around, but if not, just don't stress him out to do it. And that's kind of the only thing. I just try to make sure that sort of stuff's done. And because both the guys that help, Brian and Gareth, they both have full-time jobs, and they can't spend 4 or 5 nights in the shop, working on stuff. So if I can do that stuff and they can turn up when they want to have fun, and typically when they show up, we just end up bullshitting anyway. So, we work when we have to, but I just try to make sure everything's done that way. It's stress-free, and we can all remember that racing is fun. I think a lot of people forget that we're supposed to have fun at this, and as long as everybody's still having fun, then it's still worthwhile to go do.
And following on from that, how did that Logan Seavey deal come about to bring him down here? Because I know he ran for you in the sprint car a couple of times.
Yeah.
When you guys swept at Lucas Oil a few years ago. So
Yep.
Is that kind of where it all started, or?
Kind of, sort of, I guess. Greeny typically runs 2 cars just because he's got them sitting there. So we kind of wanted to run a second car, and he didn't want to run a full season with a second car, I don't think. So he just kind of asked who I would bring down, and at the time we just won all those races with Logan when I was hurt, so I was like, well, that's who I'd bring down. And it just so happened that first year Logan ran really well. He was really well last year, and this year he struggled a little bit there. So hopefully next year we can get him comfortable and get him better than he was, but better than this year. I think towards the end we got him a little bit better there, but I think he was kind of the same way as me, just right spot, the right time, talk to the right person at the right time, and everything kind of came about.
I know that. I mean, there's especially in the States, there's a massive pool of drivers who do want to come down here, and to find that opportunity to actually get down is tough. I know Thorson spoke about it for a long, long time about wanting to come down, and there's a massive group of other guys as well.
Yeah, you can look at my messages from Tanner and my phone about trying to find him a ride every year. And it's just the bad part is down here there's only so many car owners.
Yeah,
it's so expensive. To build a top of the line A grade midget down here. You got to have $150,000 to $200,000 stuck in a car, and it's unfathomable to go race for $1,500.
Yeah.
It's just you got to do it for a hobby to a point, but you also got to be in a position that you can afford to spend that amount of money on a hobby. So with that being said, it's so expensive that car owners there's not a car owner at every corner. So if you do get the opportunity to come down here, you got to be able to make the most of it and keep getting asked to come back, more or less. Because, like you said, there's a lot of people that want to come down here. So you got to make sure that you're better than they are.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who have kind of blown good opportunities down here as well.
Yeah.
There's a big handful of guys who have come down, and they've only come down for a couple of years, and then they've kind of, even just little things like not showing enough interest or a bad attitude is easy enough to get you kicked out of a ride down here. So it's,
And I think that stems back from like down back home, there's a lot of suit bag racers. They show up at 3 o'clock with their suit bag and they hop in the car. Down here, even Michael Pickens works on his car. Like everybody that races down here is hands on, because it's a hobby. It's not a profession down here. So, if you don't show a little bit of interest, if you don't show up at the shop, if you don't at least help do something at some point in time, then I think, because like I said, there's always more people that want to come down. So if you're not, now I understand when you're only here for a short amount of time going and seeing the countryside, understand it. But you also got to realize that you're getting a good opportunity to come down here, and you got to show some interest. You got to help out where it's needed. And if not, there ain't a plane ticket for you next year. There's somebody else.
Yeah, for sure. Who would you bring down if you had an option of someone who hasn't come down in the last however many years?
Right now, I would say.
Tough question.
Yeah, there's a few of them. It would probably be a pick between Cannon and Tanner. They both drive hard. We'll see how, like, Tanner right now has something to prove. Especially after getting hurt last year and then getting fired from the Keith deal again the second time. He has something to prove to everybody.
Yeah.
And I feel like he would be a good one to bring down. He would fit in well down here. Just his style of racing would fit in well.
He's real hands-on as well.
Yeah. Hanner's a lot like me. We get along pretty good for that aspect. He drives the rig. He works on the car. He's hands-on. He's involved. Cannon's, I think Cannon needs another year or two. He needs a year of Keith's coaching and getting used to that. Not being a family deal and not having Cody in his back pocket. I think once I'd say give him another year, and I would say he would be the guy I'd want to bring down here. Yeah. Or he may flunk out, and he may be nothing. But I don't think he will. I think he wants to do it. So I think in the next couple of years he'd be one to look at bringing down.
There's a whole lot of really good guys from 14 to 17 years old at the moment in the States as well. I mean, we went through a period there where the age kind of moved up a little bit, and it was those guys from 20 to 24 who were kind of dominating, and then all of a sudden we've got all these guys who are 15 and stuff. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think I was looking at it I think Keith just announced he's got another 14-year-old kid coming on today, and I thought, heck, he's got a couple 14-year-olds that both of them, their ages don't add up to mine. And, I'm not old by any means yet, but yeah. But I am old. It's in midget racing, I am getting to the point where I am old. I used to make fun of Tracy and, for him being the old guy, and definitely Shane. But, anymore, with them retiring, I am kind of getting to the point where I am the old guy now. So it's, but like you said, with 14-year-old kids, there's so many avenues for them to race now. They hop out outlaw carts, and they're in a micro, and they're in an asphalt late model, and they're in this and that. And heck, at 14, I was like, man, I just got a cell phone. This is cool. It's just the times have changed so much that the maturity level, I wouldn't say they're more mature because they're not, but they're getting a lot more opportunities to do really cool stuff at a younger age.
Yeah, I know down here, especially what holds us back is that all these kids from 8 to 15 are stuck in quarter midgets for so long. And so it's you don't really get the chance to develop like they do over there when you're stuck driving a 200cc, it's effectively a lawnmower, so I know how much that sucked for me. I mean, I got to 12 and I'd had enough, It's you'd kind of, but you don't have a choice. There's no option. Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what I was leading to is especially bringing the outlaw carts down now. It's kind of, it brings in an option to experience better racing younger.
Yeah. Well, I think that's, I'm not necessarily going to say better racing because quarter midget races are pretty entertaining. And quarter midgets have produced a lot of good drivers.
Yeah.
But like you said, that, they're there for a purpose, and their purpose is really well until you get to that 12 years old range. When you've ran one from 8 to 12, in 4 years you either figured out if you're good or not. And now you got to run these for another 3 or 4 years. It's man, like you're just bored. And I think that's and like you said, you can't start honing your skills in something else. You can't go run a TQ. You can't. There's no micro sprints over here. There's nothing else. You're just stuck. And I think that's what. And then on top of that, your schedule's only 15, 16, maybe 20 meetings at the most. And by the time in a midget, so now we do 3 or 4 years worth for your 1 year down here. It's tough to do that. Yeah. And hone your skill where you're not 25, 28, 30 before you start figuring it out. These kids are 14 and they've done more laps than what you have down here, and it's just different. So hopefully that's what the outlaw karts can do, and maybe shorten the age gap up between getting into a big car.
I mean, that's definitely something that we see down here. I mean, you see that age range of racing for longer tends to be down here. I mean, you've got a whole bunch of guys who are from 35 to 45 who still race midgets and sprint cars and stuff down here. I mean, you guys get a lot of guys who stick with sprint cars up in the States once they get a little bit older, but not too many really stick around in the midget class for too long.
No, and I think that's, Jerry Coons is still making it work, and I don't know how much longer he'll stay racing midgets.
The son's getting too good anyway. He needs to start focusing on him.
Yeah. Kale's really good for no more experience than what he's got. He's doing really, really well, and Jerry's taking him racing now. That's cool to see, and I think before too long he'll be dabbling in some regional stuff with a midget deal, and I'd say that's about the time Jerry will be quitting. But it's hard to. He's like me. He's a midget guy. He wasn't a sprint car racer when he started. He was a midget racer, and he transitioned into be a good sprint car and good Silver Crown racer. But I know his heart's in midgets just like mine was or is. So it'll be hard for him to get out of the seat. But I think his kid will probably make him.
Yeah. Have you done much Silver Crown stuff?
Yeah, we had a car for 2 or 3 years. It was very, very expensive. I did end up running another guy's car for a couple races. I don't know. I really enjoy the miles. Springfield, DuQuoin, and I really did love Indy, and they shut the Indianapolis Mile down now. So, I would love to race Silver Crown cars again. It's just the money you spend on them. You only race them 4 or 5 times a year, and it's a huge chunk of money sitting there. It just doesn't make sense to have one. Now, if you were old and retired and you only wanted to tinker around with 5 or 6 races a year, that'd be great. But if you want to race something and you want to race quite often, it's hard to fathom spending that amount of money on 4 or 5 races.
Yeah. Something we spoke about before we started was the comparison in racing between New Zealand and America. Is even just style and the kind of respect that is shown and the difference in the racing style is quite a bit, is pretty different.
Yeah, over here it took me a long time. I still don't really fully gather it. It's just like a full contact sport down here. Back home, it's getting to that point now, because a lot of people are racing out of desperation. They all think they're going, especially back home right now, everybody thinks they're going to NASCAR. They're the next Kyle or Christopher or whatever. And, so they're trying so hard to win a race to put themselves on the map that they end up racing out of desperation. Either it's been too long since they won a race and they think they're getting, passed up or whatever. But it's, down here is definitely, and I think it comes back to the old rugby and, over here it's a hardcore format, like you take sports very seriously over here, and and rugby is like your main sport, so it's a shake it off and hit him harder, and I think they take that into the midget racing, and it's they definitely tear up more stuff down here. It's harder to, and I think a part of that is the narrowness of the racetracks too. It's not just the drivers, it's just the tracks that are presented, but it's just definitely more of a contact sport down here versus back home. But because we can tear up about the same amount of stuff here in a season as what we do back home in a season, but our season back home's 3 times as long. So if you compare that, it's you end up really do tear up a lot of stuff down here just from racing incidents.
I remember you said something in your last interview at the Springs. You said about how it's like everyone here is quite focused on making it a show.
Yeah.
As well, like, do you find that? Do you find that it's like just because of all the TVs and all of the stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it is more of a show down here, and I wouldn't call it a show. I'd call it more of an event. We go to a lot of races. We don't go to a lot of events, and I think that's one thing you have to do nowadays. Is because there's so many different things for the fans to do. I'm not even talking to drivers, just the fans that are paying for us to, paying our purses. You have to be able to have them put on a show. Because they can go to the movies, they can go, especially here, you can go to the beaches. You can go do so many things that would draw you away from Speedway. So you do have to put on an event. You have to put on a show. You have to make things entertaining because your diehard fans, there's only so many of them. You have to do something to draw them in. I think a perfect example of that is, like, look at Huntley and look at the Springs. Huntley really didn't do any advertising. They had nothing special. It was just it was kind of a nothing meeting last week. It was just a basic race. It was the Waikato Champs, but they didn't do nothing to advertise it.
Yeah.
So
the crowd was tiny.
Yeah, tiny. Now, the smallest fan count at the Springs would be, I can't even guess how many people it is, but it's
a lot. Yeah.
10, 12, 15 times the amount that's at Huntley. And I think it's because. And I don't want to hear the excuse that it's because it's in the middle of town and you don't have to drive to it or whatever. If you want to do something, you will drive to it. People drive to the beach. They don't live right next to the beach. They have to drive to it. So, there is opportunities for that to be done. You just have to capitalize on what those people want to do.
Yeah, 100% right. Yeah, you couldn't have really said it any better than that. I've just got two last things before we wrap it up. Number one is the hearing aids. So that's obviously been a lifelong thing.
Yeah, I got them when I was 5. I was just sick as a kid. I was in and out of the hospital. I had my tonsils out when I was 5. I was just a sick kid. And in part of being sick, I lost my hearing. I had tubes in my ears. I mean, you name it, I experienced it as a kid probably. So I don't remember anything without having hearing aids. I don't remember being a kid and, running around without them. It's just something I've always had, so it's something I've just learned to. I actually kind of forget they're in there at times, so yeah. It's just like wearing glasses or wearing contacts. It's just the same thing. It's just a little bit different.
Yeah, it's not often that we get anyone in Speedway with them as well. So it's like, I remember the first time you came down and everyone kind of found out, and everyone was like, "Look over there! Look what he's got!" It was just like mind blowing for so many people.
He's got funny things. He talks funny. He's got funny things in his ears. What the hell?
Yeah. And the last thing that I've got is we need to talk about the greatest love story in Speedway.
Oh, Brian and Gareth.
Yep. So obviously, how much fun is it having those two around clowns?
It's a lot of fun. I guess you can put it that way. And they still remind us what racing is. We take it seriously. No doubt about that. When we show up at the track, we're ready to go and we're prepared. But it's also fun to just sit around and bullshit. And we drink I tried to clean up in here, and all I seen was just Pals cans and Woodies and Coronas, and we have a good time. And it's at times they've reminded us what we're supposed to race. We're supposed to have a good time at this. And I take it a little bit too seriously at times because I do it for a living, and I'll be pissed off about something at the end of the night, and they're laughing and joking and having a beer, and I'm like, I just want to be pissed off for like 10 minutes. Just let me be mad. And and at the end of the day, they remind us what it's meant to be fun and go race. And obviously they were together way before I came around, so I feel like everybody they've worked with has been the same way. And it's I say together, I'm not. You can take that for however you want to.
Absolutely.
However you want to word that one.
Yeah, I remember on the last night, because that was the first night you guys had the mule,
Yeah.
And I was saying to Gareth, I was like, I honestly, I didn't think you could look any more relaxed than like you did before. And then you watch them pushing you out on the mule and they're both like hanging out the side. Like, it looks so casual. I was losing it before the feature.
Yeah, I think that's really the only reason that they talked Greeny into getting a mule was so they could both be together. I think Gareth really missed Brian when he pushed him out on the racetrack. So this way they can both ride together. They don't, I think they might even secretly hold hands a little bit in there. I'm not even looking back and seeing what's going on when they're in staging. We're just worried about getting on the racetrack. But yeah, that's they're a little different, I guess we could say.
People might start asking questions if they're sitting behind each other on a quad bike, wouldn't they? With their arm around each other.
I'm sure it's been done.
It wouldn't surprise me. That's pretty much all I've got for now anyways. It's been a good chunk of time, good chat, so thanks for doing that, man.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
We'll see you Saturday.
Yep.